every single person on your team has the ability to turn anyone into a superfan customer. You can harness that same fandom that people have for the teams and the bands and the brands that they love for your business.
What separates good organizations from great organizations and great organizations from world-class organizations? I'm Brittany Hodak, and I've spent my entire career obsessed with what turns an average customer into a superfan.
Hi Sharks, I'm Brittany Hodak. Our zine packs have caught the attention of some pretty big stars.
Entrepreneur, customer engagement speaker, writer, co-founder of the Superfan company.
$3 million company, so congratulations to you.
Well, being great is no longer good enough. You have to be super.
I work with leaders all the time and they say, we have a huge awareness problem. Not nearly enough people know who we are. Sometimes that's true, but more of the time, plenty of people know, they just don't care because the business hasn't given them a reason to care. They haven't been good enough to make people come back again and again and tell their friends.
Superfans are created one experience at a time, one interaction at a time. If you want to set yourself apart from your competitors and create superfans, you've got to be super. This is the superfan system. S, start with your story. What is it that makes you the best in the world at your job? Your why, your drive, your uniqueness, the thing that makes you different from everyone else. Because if you don't know why you're the best, how are they ever going to be able to figure it out? You understand your customer story. So I'm on the phone and the operator says, "What's your username?" True story, the username that my husband had set up was Time Warner Sucks. I doubt that this was part of the training. He laughed and he said, "Wow, I'm really surprised that username was available. I would have thought somebody got it before now." You've got to show them that you care about them as an individual. They're not just another quota or another number that you're working on that month. And that brings us to the next step, P, personalized. I walk outside one day, there's a Chewy box. I was like, oh, did I order something from Chewy? I open it and it's these portraits. Talk about surprise and delight. I don't care if they've done this millions of times. It's still special when they do it for me because it's my dogs, my story.
Big dreaming, can't you see it? We stay shining.
E, exceed expectations. Your customer doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People are comparing you not just to the best customer service in your industry, they're comparing you to the best customer experience they've ever had. And then the R stands for repeat. And that's because you cannot automate your way to superfans. Nobody in the world ever became a superfan of something because they were put in the right funnel, right? Nobody was ever like, man, on that 17th automatic email I got, I was in, like I connected.
The formula exists, and if you follow it, you will create superfans. You will turn your customers into loyal advocates that will create more customers for you. And when you can do that, it's magic.
I'm a firm believer that there's really only 3 kinds of experience that any of us ever have in our life. At the end of anything, whether it's one-on-one, one-to-many, something quick, something that plays out over a long period of time, you are going to leave feeling one of only 3 ways. Better, worse, or the same. That's it. I call these net negative, net neutral, and net positive. And the overwhelming majority of the experiences that most of us have every day are what? Neutral. They're like nothing burgers. They just happen and we move on. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of times a day, whether it's saying hello to somebody, an interaction, an email, whatever it is. If you are intentional about elevating your neutral moments into positive ones, you will create superfans. You will create opportunities for people to say, wow, and share a story. We were at the Legoland Resort about a week ago in Florida. It was our third time visiting. If you have kids or grandkids, I highly recommend checking out the Legoland Resort in Winter Haven, Florida. It's a lot of fun. They've got a theme park. They've got the hotel. This is a picture of an elevator at the hotel. And if you cannot tell, this elevator is a party. They've got the disco ball, lights. The minute you step in, music is playing. It's like the Bee Gees and ABBA. It is a party. The first time we stayed at the Legoland Resort, this elevator was my kid's favorite part of everything. Like more than the roller coasters, more than the characters. We were in that elevator so much. But it took about 3 days before I realized that was the slowest elevator I have ever been in my life. And like, not metaphorically speaking, like literally, it took forever. Like the whole song Dancing Queen would play between the lobby and the 5th floor. But it took 3 days and probably a dozen times in that elevator for me to even notice. And once I figured out how slow it was, I didn't even mind. Because they had taken a slow elevator and they had transformed it into something different. They had made it an experience. Typically, speed is like the number 2 thing we care about in an elevator after safety, right? But they flipped the script. I'm sharing this because I promise you, right now, in your business, there are some slow elevators. Your customers may be feeling them, your employees may be feeling them. And instead of just throwing your hands up in the air and saying, well, we can't replace the elevator, or, well, we can't make the elevator go faster, I challenge you to use creativity and intentionality to think about what is in your control. What can you do? Even if you can't make it go faster, can you make it feel faster? Can you communicate to your customers before and after what it means? The difference between good companies and super companies is the attention to slow elevators, making them feel faster.
So I talked to several of you guys in preparation for this event, and what I found was that a lot of you are spending a ton of your time on the during, right? You're focusing on really nailing the customer experience or the borrower experience during that loan period, right? And because that takes so much of your time and because that's so important, you have less time to think about what you're doing after. You know, I heard some of you say, oh yeah, I try to send handwritten Christmas cards every year, or I put them into my drip campaign and Total Expert to follow up with them, or they get a gift every 3 months. You're doing maybe a little bit of the before, right? But those of you who I talked to said, I feel like I'm really nailing the experience during, like while I'm working with my borrower, they're having a great experience. But what, again, I want to challenge you guys to do is think about maybe making your time look a little bit more like this. Because while the during is important, the people that are going to get the referrals are the ones who are nailing the before and the after. I come from the entertainment world, so I work a lot with musicians, and I always say, you know, for anybody who's been to a concert or a music festival, you're gonna have a great time during the experience, right? You're gonna really enjoy while you're there, while the engagement is happening, while the band is playing, while you're drinking, while you're with your buddies. The festivals that have really built their brands and have done a really great job and have really grown and proliferated over the years are the ones that know how to stretch that customer experience. Not just the during, but the before and the after. So the before, you want people to be so pumped and so excited and so engaged and ready to work with you, to meet with you, either because of what they've seen online or because their friend or their family member who referred them to you said you're going to have an amazing experience. So that's the before. And then the after is staying top of mind. I don't know anybody who wants fewer referrals in their business, right? I don't know anybody who says, I want fewer customers bringing me customers, because as you guys all know, when you get the referrals, your job is a lot easier, right? These are people who are already pre-qualified, they already have an affinity towards you, they've already got some sort of level of trust that's been built up by whoever made the referral. So the better part we can do on shifting more time to the after, keeping yourselves top of mind with those customers that you've helped, with those borrowers, even after the process is closed, that's how you're gonna get that virtuous cycle of more people coming into the before. So that's what we're gonna talk about as we go through the presentation today. And a quote that I really love from a speaker named Larry Wingate is, discover your uniqueness and learn to exploit it in the service of others. And you're guaranteed success, happiness, and prosperity. And I would add to that list, you're going to make super fans. But I love this, discover your uniqueness. Discover what it is that makes you different than anyone else. Discover how you can make the human experience with you different than anyone else. Another quote that has the same heart to it, but said in a different way, is a really famous quote by Maya Angelou that I absolutely love. I'm sure you guys have all seen this before, but I feel like it's so important that it's worth repeating here. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. We all know this to be true from our lives, right? We're emotional creatures. We would all like to think that we are perhaps much more logical than we are, and that we make decisions on a much more logical basis than an emotional basis. But as we heard Sally describe so eloquently yesterday, and as you guys know from doing your jobs, people are emotional creatures, right? We remember how people made us feel. Perhaps you guys remember a time you were made to feel bad when you were, a kid, right? Like, things stay with you. And so that's why when you can create an amazing, memorable experience for your borrowers from before you even meet with them all the way through the home buying experience, you've nailed it, right? Because you guys are all in the business of making dreams come true, which is so cool, right? You get to go to work every day and help people accomplish one of the biggest dreams they ever have. So as we go through the presentation today, I'm going to be talking to you guys a lot about superfans. And when I say the word superfans, a lot of times this is kind of what people have in their mind as the preconceived notion, right? And people say, well, how does that apply to me? How does a superfan apply to what I'm trying to do in my business and in my world? So yes, these people certainly would qualify as superfans, but I want to challenge you guys to think about the word a little bit differently. Over the past 15 years of my career of working with brands and entertainers, I've come up with this definition that to me really personifies what a superfan is. A superfan is a customer who over-indexes in their affinity for a brand or a person or a service, thereby increasing the chance that they're going to advocate on behalf of that entity as part of their everyday life. So this is my definition, and there's 4 important parts that make this matter as we talk through the presentation today. Part number 1 is the word customer. This is someone who has actually been through the process of working with you. So this is a borrower or a partner or a real estate partner. This is somebody who has that relationship with you. You all probably have superfans in your life that maybe are, a spouse or a kid. They're great, but referrals from those people aren't going to hold as much weight as someone who has actually been through the process of working with you and can attest firsthand, not just that you're a great person, but that you're incredible at the job that you do. So that's the first part. The second part, they over-index in their affinity. This is someone who loves you, right? This is not just someone who said, oh yeah, I had a pretty good experience. This is someone who had an incredible experience. Number 3, this is somebody who's advocating on your behalf. So you guys have all probably had customers before who, even though they had an incredible experience with you, they never told anybody, right? Sometimes the reason for this is simple. Sometimes the reason is they just don't know. Like, if you've never worked in a sales-related industry, you might not realize how important referrals are. You might not realize that you could really be doing a service to somebody by making an introduction or a connection, which is why it's important to ask for referrals, to actively let people know how much you would appreciate them sharing the word about what you do, not just assuming that they know that. So there's a chance that there are people who are not advocating on your behalf. Again, we're not talking about them. Fourth part, these are people who are doing it as part of everyday life. So as we go through the presentation today, I'm not talking about influencer marketing, I'm not talking about affiliate marketing or people that you're paying in some way. These are not people who have a transactional relationship with you. These are, again, customers who love what you do and are talking about it as part of their everyday life. That's what I'm talking about when I say superfans, and those are the types of customers that I want to teach you guys how to get more of. So here's another really great quote that I love. And I was running my own startup for about 10 years. I exited it earlier this year. And when I read this quote several years ago, it really changed the way that I thought about my business in a fundamental way. And I thought, wow, this is so smart, and this really gets to the core of what everybody should be doing in their business. The purpose of a business is to create customers who create customers. And if you can do that, if you can create a customer who creates more customers to you, think about how much easier your job gets, right? It's infinitely easier because you have this constant influx of highly referred people who want to work with you. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about superfans. Okay, this is my husband, Jeff. This is a picture of us a few years ago. He is a huge University of Michigan superfan. Any Michigan fans in the audience? Oh. All right, I appreciate the passion, right? I can appreciate some college football passion. Have any of you guys seen the movie that came out several years ago with Drew Barrymore and Jimmy Fallon called Fever Pitch? You guys swear he is like a huge Red Sox fan and he's a different person during baseball season? Okay, that is my husband. That is who I'm married to. Football Jeff is a very different person than rest of the year Jeff. So we got together 11 years ago, which is, for those of you who do follow Michigan football or do college football, we got together at the beginning of the Rich Rodriguez era. We started dating like 2 weeks before Rich Rodriguez took over the team. So Jeff's telling me all about how great Michigan is and the dynasty that is Michigan football, and they weren't that great. And we were going to lots of games, and I was playing along. I grew up in SEC country, so I appreciate college football, but was never somebody who went to like 10 games a year. And my husband and I were flying all over the country to go to all these Michigan football games because he was such a fan. So again, I'm like playing along. And then I was like, I'm gonna be a nice wife and play along until we have like kids or something, and I can't indulge this like crazy hobby of Michigan football anymore. So fast forward a few years, and we moved to Nashville. We moved from New York to Nashville, and I was pregnant. And as I started telling my friends I was pregnant, I kept getting the same question over and over again, which was, what are you gonna do for your gender reveal? Do you guys all know about gender reveal parties? So crazy. For those of you who don't know, people go to these elaborate lengths to let people know if they're having a boy or a girl. They like shoot off cannons with smoke that's either pink or blue. They go to these, like crazy stunts, and it's all about letting your friends and family know. So as people were saying to me, what are you gonna do? I was like, can't the doctor just tell me? Like, this seems so unnecessary. I had such a bad attitude about it, by the way. I was like, I am growing a person inside my body. Why is that not enough? Like, I feel like you guys are asking me to go way above me, right? I was like, this is like another dumb thing that we expect people to do as part of the culture, like unsubscribe. Like, I am not here for any of this. Like, I was like, I will find out what we have when the baby is born. So anyway, my husband, who is this, again, huge Michigan football fan, says, well, what if we ask Jim Harbaugh, who's the coach of the Michigan football team, to do our gender reveal for us? I was like, hilarious. Like, I don't know anything about Jim Harbaugh, but I know that he's probably a really busy guy. For those of you who don't know, Jim Harbaugh was a coach in the NFL before he took the job at Michigan a few years ago. And when he came back to Michigan, it was a huge deal because he was a quarterback at Michigan during college, and his dad taught at Michigan like in the 80s or 90s. So Jim Harbaugh grew up as part of the Michigan football team. He was like the hero coming home. So not to mention, he was my husband's first hero as like a 7 or 8 year old kid when Jim Harbaugh was the quarterback at Michigan. When my husband was growing up in the state of Michigan, worshiped this guy. So I'm like, great. Now not only as, we have to do this stupid thing, my husband's gonna be so disappointed when his hero doesn't respond to this crazy letter. But I was like, okay. So we literally went to the doctor and I was like, give me 2 envelopes with the thing, and I'm gonna open the second one when we don't hear anything in 2 weeks. Like, I told my husband, you have 2 weeks for this crazy plan, and then I'm gonna open this stupid envelope so people stop asking me like what I'm having. So my husband and I put together this letter to Coach Harbaugh, and we did it as a letter of intent. So when a kid signs up to play football for a school, they sign what's called a letter of intent saying, I'm gonna play here. So we wrote this from the baby saying, hey coach, I want to come play for you one day if I'm a boy. Can you please let my parents know? And there's like some cute little puns and stuff in there. But we sent this letter from the baby, again, thinking nothing's ever going to happen. Like, I just sent it to the address that I found online for the athletic department. A couple weeks later, this note comes in the mail from Coach Harbaugh. It says, Baby Hodak, I've carefully studied the information from your mom and dad, Jeff and Brittany, and on behalf of the University of Michigan, I'm offering you a 2035 scholarship. Hopefully, with God willing and the creek not rising, I will be here to coach you. Go Blue, Jim Harbaugh. So, of course, the first thing I did was text a picture to my best friend who's a lawyer, and I was like, is this gonna stand up? Like, is this? I was like, it feels like we just saved about $500,000. Like, is this gonna stand up? But so think about how cool it was that someone who's so busy, who has so much going on, took the time to write this note to people he's never met, that he knows nothing about, for an event that's going to have absolutely no impact on his life for like 18 years. And then obviously my son's gonna be a star football player for Michigan. So, the cynic can say like, oh, maybe he was just recruiting really early. But what I think is happening there is someone who took the time to do something that, again, has no impact on his life just to make somebody else's story better. And when this happened, I started doing a little bit of research on Coach Harbaugh and saw that he does stuff like this all the time. He sends handwritten notes to weddings and bar mitzvahs and baptisms and all kinds of events that have no direct impact on his life, but he knows how important he is to all of these other people. And I was like, what a cool guy. So again, I started, at that point, I was like, I'm in. Like, that one note did more to turn me into a Michigan football fan than 10 years of going to games with my husband every Saturday, right? Because all of a sudden, I had a personal connection. It wasn't just I was married to this Michigan football super fan and this Michigan alum. It was, I've got a personal connection to the team, to the school. Like, I was in. I was like, can I join the Alumni Association? Like, I literally, I sent a note and I was like, I'm raising a future alum, like, in my body right now. Does that count? Can I join? Which turns out you don't. They were like, you can just join as a spouse. And I was like, okay, well, cool, like, great. So, but that's like, I was like, maybe I'll go back and get a PhD at Michigan. Like, I want to go to this school. Like, I was in, right? Because of that one action. And as I said, Coach Harbaugh does a lot of this type of stuff. This is a picture that I pulled up of his Twitter in November. These were all the kids and some adults who dressed as him for Halloween. So on November 1st, he tweeted this out, and he commended everybody on attacking Halloween with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, which, for those of you who know anything about Jim Harbaugh, that's one of his Harbaughisms that he says. So I don't know how many people are on this board, like 100, 150, but each one of them now feel the same way that my husband and I feel, right? They all have now a personal connection to Jim Harbaugh because he's acknowledged them. He's validated what they're doing. He said, I love what you're doing, and your story is now part of my story, right? How much did this cost? $0. How much did sending me that note cost? $0, right? What I love about this is I'm sure somebody on his team searched for all of these pictures and printed them off. He went and stood by it, maybe looked to, admire the pictures for a couple of seconds. Someone took the picture and he tweeted it out. That was a couple of minutes of time. But for each of those people, now forever, their connection is, wow, Jim Harbaugh saw what I did for Halloween. He printed out my picture. He hung it up on a board in his office, and he tweeted it out to his millions of followers. How cool is that, right? And so that's why when I talk about superfans, it's so important to know that you can't buy superfans. You can't pay people to love you. It's like I said yesterday. You guys remember in Aladdin when the genie says he can have 3 wishes? And what's the one? There's 2 things he can't do. He can't bring anybody back from the dead. And what's the other thing that he can't do? Do you guys remember? Can't make someone fall in love with you. And that's because you can't fake love, right? It has to be authentic. You can't pay people to love you. And that's why I say you can't buy superfans. And that's because the best marketing doesn't cost any money. You guys remember the MasterCard campaign for like 20 years where they said priceless, right? And it worked so well because it was true. The best experiences are priceless. They don't cost anything. You can't pay people to love you. You've got to make them feel. Okay, so by show of hands, how many of you guys would consider yourselves a super fan of something? A team, a company, an experience, a brand? Okay, awesome. A good number of you. All right. So you guys are in pretty good company. And that's because 85% of people, according to a recent survey, consider themselves super fans of something. And that number jumps all the way up to 97% when you're talking about people between the ages of 18 and 24 who self-select as a super fan. And the reason that's important is because when we are a super fan of something, we do more. We consider it part of our story. There was actually a really interesting study a few weeks ago that came out that said people who are super fans feel an actual ownership, especially in the younger generation. They feel like they have ownership of these things that they are super fans of. And to paraphrase Variety here, to quote from Variety, when we define ourselves as fans, we do more. We watch more, share more, buy more, evangelize more, participate more, help more. Again, these are the kinds of customers that you need. These are the kinds of borrowers that you want because they attract more borrowers. So you guys remember Maslow's hierarchy? For like every psychology class you took in school where it was like, here's what's going to happen on the base before you can build up. So this is something that I call the superfan wave method. This was something that I came up with kind of like my superfan, or kind of like my Maslow's hierarchy of how you take people from new customer to super engaged advocate. So WAVE is an acronym. It stands for welcomed, appreciated, validated, and engaged. And in my experience, those are the 4 levels that you need to hit off on. And if you can get those things right, you're going to be doing a great job in creating fans. We don't have time today day to go through each of these 4, which by the way, these really parallel great on the employee side too, because it's impossible to nail the customer experience if you don't have engaged employees. You guys who are managers know this to be true, right? So it's the same 4 steps. So for those of you who want the Superfan Wave, you can get it for free. You can just text the word Superfans to this short code, 66866. And I'll send you guys an email with a free copy of the book. And I'll also send a link to this presentation. Yesterday, a couple people said, hey, we couldn't get it from the app or we could only get it on our phone. So I'll also include a PDF of the presentation in the workbook if you're interested in that. So it's totally free. And I'll put this number up again for you guys a little later. Okay, so 83% of global customers say they trust recommendations from a friend or family member. Not only is that significantly higher than the 2/3 who trust reviews posted online, but it absolutely dwarfs every other form of advertising. Word of mouth is by far the most trusted communication. You're going to get a higher ROI than any other way that you're spending money or spending time focusing on advertising. So how do we do it, right? How do we get people to share our story and talk about us? How do we get these fans to refer us? So the secret is you've got to connect your story to their story in a meaningful way. If people aren't able to articulate what it is that you do, they're probably not going to talk about you, right? Because they don't know how. We've got to make it super easy for a borrower to articulate the value that you can add to somebody else because it might be different than what you did for them, right? You guys know every single deal you do is personalized. Every single deal you do has its own unique challenges that you guys are going to help people overcome. So that's the story, right? That's helping people understand beyond the scope of just what you did for them that you can do for their friends and family and anybody else in their network who might need you. So you've got to connect your story to their story. This is a slide that says exactly the same thing as that last slide, but I feel like it looks smarter as a Venn diagram. So that part in the middle, your story and their story, that's what you're trying to accomplish, right? That's where the superfan magic happens. And okay, show of hands, how many of you guys get a little overwhelmed by all the new social networks and all the new technology that's coming out all the time? Right? Same, me too. And I don't have it in here, but I found a really great quote a few weeks ago from 1964. McKinsey was talking about how quickly the pace of marketing is changing, and with the rapid pace, how hard it is to stay on top of new trends. So I was like, oh, this is not a new problem. This has been a problem for generations, right? Of people feeling like there's always a new system to learn. There's always a new platform I'm supposed to be on. There's always some new technology I'm being tasked with incorporating into my sales cycle. But here's the thing. In marketing, the why and the who are always, always, always more important than the how. So the how is what you're doing to reach them, right? So the how could be, I'm doing Instagram stories. The how could be, I've got this email marketing campaign that I'm working on every month. The how could be the blog on your website. The how could be traditional marketing, right? It could be a mailer that you're doing through the mail. It could be a party that you're having. The how is not as important as the why and the who, and it never will be. And that's because if you nail the why and the who, if you get that right, the how is going to take care of itself every time.